10 years ago today, I learned that my application to Meadville Lombard, our Unitarian Universalist seminary in Chicago, had been accepted, and the adventure began. I was 67 years old, and I was really looking forward to new kinds of learning as I made my way through the curriculum. Like most seminaries, Meadville had about 10 required courses, and I was very surprised to discover that one of them was not global religions, even though our denomination holds itself out as a big tent that welcomes people of all theisms and non-theisms. Fortunately, we were allowed to take up to 3 courses at other accredited seminaries, and because I thought a course in world religions was crucial for a firm grounding in interfaith work towards social justice, I started to look for such a course that I could take online somewhere else. As my East Texas grandmother would say, I must have been living right, because I soon learned that Starr King, our UU seminary in Berkeley, was offering an online course in global religions during the only semester I could reasonably work it into my degree plan. I immediately signed up for it, and it was hands down the best course I took during my 3-year trek toward a Master of Divinity. The textbook was excellent. The brilliant yet accessible professor was a Jew who was fluent in Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, and whose specialty was Islamic mysticism. And the lectures and music and art and articles and videos she selected to enhance the textbook readings were stunning and thought-provoking. The course moved seamlessly from indigenous religious traditions of First Nations, Native Americans, Australian Aborigines, and Africa to Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Shinto, then to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and then to even newer religions such as the Baha'i faith. And as the course progressed, I was reminded of the words of the late Canadian poet Margaret Avison. In the mathematics of God, there are percentages beyond 100. And I was also once again reminded, as I had not been since I worked as an immigration judge, that knowing our own religious truth is not the same as knowing the whole truth. That knowing our own truth does not mean that we know best when it comes to beliefs and actions. That truth does not exist out there as a fixed, abstract reality. That each person creates a matrix of truths by which they live. And that more than anything, truth is an unfolding that can be known by how it shows up in relationships, how it is understood in context, and how it is shaped by communities. I had intended to talk today about religious and cultural pluralism, but including both of those in today's program proved unwieldy. And I know you're not going to sit here for 55 minutes and listen, but I'm going to limit my talk to religious pluralism with the observation that engaging with religious pluralism will surely lead to knowledge of at least one other culture, because religion and culture are so intertwined. Religious pluralism has been defined in many ways by philosophers, theologians, sociologists, and anthropologists. And the final proposed amendment to Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws, which will be taken up at this summer's General Assembly, pluralism is defined as one of our 6 inseparable shared values that are held together by love. Jan read them to you, but let me just do this, a short description that they have provided, which reads like this: "We celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect." Although on its face this is a practical working definition of pluralism, to me it sounds very thin and vague and not very challenging. Additionally, it seems very inwardly focused on ourselves. We covenant to learn from one another. We embrace our differences. I get it that we're supposed to do that among ourselves as UUs, but what about learning from the music and art and writings and lived experiences of folks who are not within the UU fold? So what I want to do in the remaining minutes is to offer a more specific approach to religious pluralism, to examine some practices that we think are pluralistic but are in fact acts of cultural appropriation, and to propose some constructive suggestions about how we can start to become more deeply and authentically pluralistic outside of our denomination. The leading authority on genuine religious pluralism is the late Dr. Rita Gross, who was professor of comparative studies in religion at the University of Wisconsin. In many different venues and wherever she spoke, Dr. Gross never quit insisting that the building blocks of genuine religious pluralism are these three things. First, deep curiosity and a willingness to learn. Second, the development of an empathy that leads us to enter the mental and spiritual universes of others so we can discover their internal logic and coherence. And third, self-acceptance and comfortability with the uniqueness of our own traditions so that we don't see our beliefs or rituals as either better than or less meaningful than those of other religions. Let's look more closely at each of these three building blocks, starting with a deep curiosity and a willingness to learn. Many times, my own curiosity about things is shallow indeed, and I short-circuit what could be a number of good learning experiences. About 10 days ago, for example, my wife and I were watching a golf tournament on TV where the winner's last name was Bhatia, B-H-A-T-I-A. I wondered if he might be from India, so I Googled his name only to find out that he was born in California. But Google also had an entry for the word Bhatia. I read the first sentence of it and learned that Bhatia is one of the castes in India. Did I read any further? Nope, because my curiosity was not deep, and I did not have the willingness to learn something new to me about the social system in India. The second building block in the architecture of genuine pluralism is the development of an empathy that leads us to enter the mental and spiritual universes of others so we can discover their internal logic and coherence. This is a hard one for me because I find it very daunting to develop an empathy for mental and spiritual universes that exclude women and or LGBTQIA+ people from denominational practices such as ordination, marriage, or preaching. I look for common ground with other faiths and can usually find it in social justice work, such as assisting homeless people or feeding folks who are hungry. But ascertaining the internal logic and coherence of faiths that exclude groups of people from full participation has escaped me. The third and final building block of Dr. Gross's approach to genuine pluralism is self-acceptance and comfortability with the uniqueness of our own traditions, so that we don't see our beliefs or rituals as either better than or less meaningful than those of other religions. My sense is that we, as UUs, excel in being accepting and comfortable in our own traditions, but that we don't know very much about them. This was true of me when I entered seminary 10 years ago and was astonished by all I did not know about Unitarian and Universalist histories, not to mention the history of our denomination since the merger of the two in 1961. I also knew nothing about Michael Servetus, a 16th century Spanish physician who was burned at the stake for challenging the Trinitarian doctrine that Jesus and the Holy Spirit are divine, and who is considered the first modern Unitarian martyr. Or how about the European origins of our traditional flower communion? Gaining more knowledge about our own history will clarify our perspective about ourselves, and it can prevent us from having an unpleasant attitude of Unitarian Universalist exceptionalism. I've thought a lot about the unconscious barriers that keep us and me from genuine religious pluralism. I want to mention 3 of them and suggest a remedy for each one. The first is just plain ignorance about the religious and spiritual traditions of others. For example, what do we really know about Islam? Have we ever read one of the several plain language translations of the Quran? What are some of the major holidays in the Hindu faith? What are some of the core concepts in the Japanese Shinto religion? It is beyond important that we begin reading and learning about global religions. This can start with something as accessible as articles in Wikipedia, a textbook about global religions, or videotaped college lectures on YouTube, or open enrollment and usually free courses through edx.org and Coursera, which is now offering a course from Harvard entitled Religious Literacy. I also just learned that April is National Arab American Heritage Month, and that PBS is offering documentaries and programs to celebrate the history and diversity of Arab Americans. It doesn't get much easier than a button on the remote to start learning about a faith and culture that has a powerful presence globally and also in Houston. A second impediment to genuine religious pluralism is our own good intentions, which often lead us into actions that are cultural appropriation in disguise. This was me 50 years ago, wearing a beaded bracelet when I worked as a Vista volunteer on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. This is a white minister who wears a kente cloth stole on the Sunday before Martin Luther King Day. This is a Protestant congregation that decides to have a Passover Seder led by someone who is not Jewish, or a congregation that holds a Dia de los Muertos service not led by someone whose heritage includes those days of remembrance. In other words, in our effort to show awareness and solidarity with others, we take things that are not ours. Beaded bracelets belong to Native American culture. Kente cloth and Kwanzaa belong to African American culture. Passover belongs to Jews, and Dia de los Muertos belongs to Latinx people. To put it plainly, if we do something performative or imitative of another religious culture, we are engaging in the kind of white-centeredness that we as Unitarian Universalists say we are intent on dismantling. The last thing that comes to mind about barriers to religious pluralism is the tendency of white people to value the written word over lived experiences. It's certainly useful for us to read widely about other religions, but the shortest distance between two people is a story. And we don't often invite people who, say, live in the thick of Islamophobia to come to our congregations and tell us about the moral injury of having their spiritual values become objects of hatred and violence. In considering how we can better practice genuine religious pluralism, it helps me to remember that every religion is a language whose functions are communication, the expression of identity and imagination, the making of meaning out of the facts of our temporal existence, and the giving of shape to the invisible world. We can begin to learn those religious languages in the same way each of us learned our own first spoken language, by watching, by listening, by asking, by listening some more, by studying, and by practicing. Being born into a mother tongue does not preclude us from speaking other languages, and being born into a specific religion or no religion does not preclude you or me from learning the wisdom of any and all religions. And I think we can all agree that the more spoken languages we know, the more nuanced our understanding of life becomes. And the more religious languages we know, the more nuanced becomes our understanding of truth, reality, and human learning. The newly articulated Unitarian Universalist value of pluralism is ripe for our creative interpretation and robust action. I know this congregation to be filled with people who have strong minds and loving hearts, and I'm certain that you will strengthen each other and the surrounding community as you live into pluralism by continuing to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly, and speak new faith languages. Grace to you and peace.